Hello and welcome to the Purim edition of the Rabbi's Ramblings. I hope you've been well. When one thinks of the holiday of Purim, what comes to mind is a joyful, jolly day, and even one that includes some silliness in it. And that is what Purim is about. But there is also a much more profound side to Purim, which we'll talk a little bit about now. In fact, when one looks at the story of Purim, we can see a microcosm of our history as a people. Going to the beginning of the Megillah, we have how Achashverosh invites all the inhabitants of his entire kingdom to come participate in a feast that he has made for them, and including kosher food for the Jewish people. We then have how Haman plots together with the king to destroy, to kill, and wipe out the entire nation of the Jewish people, and ultimately Esther, who had become the queen, and her identity as a Jewess was a secret, but she reveals her identity and makes a request of the king to save her people, which she ultimately does, and hangs Haman on the gallows. Looking back at our history, we've seen that there have been times, especially during times of affluence, where we tend to try to put our Jewish identity on the back burner. We try to segue ourselves or melt away into the high society, to become one and really identify with that. The saying, oh, you're too Jewish. Well, that's what was happening with the feast that the Jewish people attended by Achashverosh. Everything, according to the law, was kosher. The food was kosher. Everything was okay technically. The problem was that the Jews began to identify less as Jews and more as members of high society. Comes along an enemy and says, I don't see you as a member of high society. I don't see you as anything else but a Jew. Whether you display your Jewishness in open or not, all the Jews are equal in front of me, and I seek to destroy the entire Jewish people. Then we look at, where does the salvation come from? The salvation comes from when Esther comes to make this request of the king to save her people. But as she tells Mordechai that someone who comes before the king without being summoned can be put to death, unless the king puts out his golden scepter. So before going to the king without being summoned, one would think Esther should prepare herself with makeup and such. But yet, what do we find? That even though she has to come in and charm the king with her beauty, she's fasting for 3 days before. Why? Because she recognizes that the salvation for the Jewish people will not come from political connections and from rubbing shoulders with the political elite. Where will it come from? It will come from Hashem, from davening, when all the Jewish people gather as one, and all identify as a Jew, as Jewish people. That's where the salvation will come from. When we are ready to stand up and say, we are Jewish, and we are proud, and we turn to Hashem and say, please help us and save us from this enemy, that's the way, ultimately, the Hamans in our history can hang from the very gallows that they built to hang Mordechai from. Hope you have a very, very happy Purim and Shabbat Shalom.